Hey everyone, this is Sho-Sho, and this is Brandon, and this is Hua, and we are doing our first episode of Asian Pickles, where we talk about the pickles that we're in as Asians. So, for this first episode, we're going to be talking about Asian Americans figuring out we're not white. How did we figure out that we're not white? I've got a story, we've all got a story, so we're going to start off telling our personal stories about how we came out as being Asians.
You want to go first?
Okay, I will go first. Okay, so when I guess the first thing I need to say is that I really loved white supremacy at one point in my life. Like I bought it hook, line, and sinker, and I didn't like Asians. I wanted only white company. It seemed civilized to me. And so, like, in the last few years, as I've decolonized, I have experienced intense grief, and it goes on to this very day. So, that is like understanding my own internalized racism and self hatred and self racism, like all these words. But the thing that really broke me was when my husband, who was white, passed away. So he died of cancer in 2016. And that caused me to really drop down many rungs of the social ladder that I hadn't even seen before. Like it didn't matter that I had advanced degrees or like financial knowledge or any kind of status that I had believed in. And it just, it just sort of like put me right back into a reverse Cinderella scenario where I turned back into a pumpkin and was like, oh my God, I'm Asian. I thought I was white and I wasn't. I didn't. My white knight was dead and I had no protection.
It's like, oh, your privilege just vanished overnight.
Overnight, yeah. That's what it seemed like to me. It's what it felt like to me for me and my two kids.
Sounds like white adjacency. The benefits of white adjacency just went poof.
That's what it felt like.
Could you talk about what white supremacy is? Just for some people to hear that and they think KKK, like Ku Klux Klan, like that kind of stuff. But in regards to like Asian Americans, like what white supremacy is.
Shit. Well, that's a big question. I don't know. Can you guys like help me weigh in on this? It's first I want to say it's like a feeling in my bones.
Yeah, I definitely, as an Asian-bodied man, I think I have felt and experienced it since the day I became conscious, but I had no words for it, and it's telling me like where my place is, like immediately without any verbal, like any explicit explanation as to like, here's where you really sit on the totem pole.
Okay, so then how did you first discover that you were Asian and not white?
So I first discovered that I wasn't white when I was getting like my first therapeutic experience when I was about maybe 29, 30. I'd gone through a breakup and I sought out a sex and relationship coach for the first time in my life ever. But I went to like all kinds of like therapeutic events or just started inquiring and I was like, I'm the only fucking Asian person here. Why is that? That is very strange. And I would also be treated special because they're like, oh, an Asian who isn't soft spoken, and like it would be like kind of in passing comments, but I'm like, why the fuck
Were
does
you
it
like
matter?
tokenized?
Yeah, I
in
didn't
that
even know what
space?
tokenizing was.
Oh.
I was just like, oh, cool, these are cool people, right? They're into like healing and like self improvement. It's just white spaces that didn't include Asian people before.
So that was when you first saw yourself as an Asian man, but through the white gaze, you saw yourself as Asian.
Yeah, about 2016, probably 2015. I got an inkling, and then I finally moved to Oakland, and I was like, oh, for sure, like, I am an Asian American man. I didn't know how to make sense of that, so I'll talk about that later, but that was kind of like my big aha moment.
Cool. How about you, Hua?
My coming out story?
Yeah.
Oof. Well, I'm a child of an immigrant, so I don't think I have a lot of identity with white folks, but I have experience with assimilation and acculturation. So that that era of my life was like me trying to figure out how to fit in and how to belong. And I grew up in Central Valley, predominantly red, and it's a lot of I wouldn't say homogenous, but it was Asian definitely stood out. Like they weren't the majority. It wasn't until grad school that I think I had like an epiphany of that I am not safe in my own body, in my own skin. Like our cohort was one of the first cohort that accepts students without GRE score. And GRE as an exam is a white supremacist system that required kids to study in a certain way and pass a test in a certain way in order to get a certain score. So, in the School of Social Work, you can't, in order to serve that, the marginalized communities, they don't want people who predominantly white. So I think my graduate program was pretty radical in terms of accepting students. But with the whole cohort being so diverse, we start challenging the curriculum. We start challenging the instructor. A lot of hard conversations. I would say as soon as the first quarter started, we had tears running almost. We had like support groups. We have regular meetups just to kind of talk about how to really support other students of color in this like predominantly white space, because you have all the teachers who are pretty much white, and you have all the students who paying a lot of money to go to school just to, social work is not a money making profession, like it's barely minimum wage. So there was just a lot of conflict and of ideologies, of beliefs, cultural appropriation, just a lot of, we have a class where every single class we had to start out by going through different type of meditation practice. Like we have a laughing meditation for like 5 minutes, and it was a little off. I truly felt a sense of cultural appropriation when we were forced to sit in silence not in a space where it was healing, but it was just more of a forced practice. So it was my breakthrough.
Okay.
For sure.
So for you, it was crying in grad school.
It was having a lot of mental breakdown.
Yeah, as a first BIPOC cohort in social work for graduate school for social work. Yeah. And for you, Brandon, it was going into healing white spaces as the only Asian American man and feeling odd and tokenized there. And for me, it was my white husband dying and leaving me unprotected and without privileges anymore. Okay, so I think this question of how Asian Americans realize they're white and is actually this question of where do Asian Americans fit in the U.S. racial order? And back to this question of white supremacy, I think that the carrot is that Asian Americans get to be equal to whites. But the gain to get to that carrot is, in order to be close to white, you must be anti-black. And that is the definition of white supremacy. You have to be anti-black.
For Asian Americans to enter the game, to claim your benefits, you have to be anti-black. That is the first prerequisite that they, at least on my end, that was taught to me from the first day I could remember anything, is don't associate with black and brown people. Don't go into black and brown neighborhoods because only bad things like drugs will happen, or they'll rob you. But the implicit thing is don't associate with them because you'll be choosing a side.
But this is even your Asian family telling
you this.
Right,
this is my Asian family.
So you get the message, and same, you get the message at home with your Asian family, and also outside when you walk out your front door by the dominant white American culture as well.
It's like Asian communities are fighting for the second place, right? And we have to outcompete every other race because the number one place will always be what?
Right, but we are told that we get a shot at that number one place, but we actually will never
That's
be
delusional.
able to occupy. Yeah, it's delusional, that number one place. And the highest that I realize we can get as Asian Americans is middle management. So that is the place that we as Asian Americans occupy in the US racial order, is the middle, like smack dab in the middle between white and black.
And there's clear that actually Asian American men in corporate America suing because they have been overqualified for C-level positions, and they are being outgunned by people who are completely mediocre. And so they're taking like litigious action now because it was just sort of a cultural practice, but now they're like, oh no, we're gonna try to like, this is discrimination, like pure and simple.
Yeah, like middle management completely, we will never enter the C-suite. We'll never get number one.
But it's also very capitalistic that we're coming from a place of it has to be a competition.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be a level of hierarchy, the winner and the loser, which is very capitalistic, very Western centric.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it feels like we have to be better or we're going to be falling behind.
And I think white supremacy figured that out when they created the model minority myth. They did the cover-up story. It was such a... I've spent so much time on this, but they did such a good PR like cover-up that they're like, hey, Asian Americans are doing great. When they're really immigrants who already had secondary degrees from China and other Asian countries coming to America, but they were ignoring all of the laborers who had been there for 40 plus years, who are still like under the poverty line. And they're like, see, Asians did well, guys. You can do it too if you really play this game. And they used us as bait.
Can I just say how much I hate that phrase, model minority? It sounds, first off, so outdated and so last century, like melting pot. That's another phrase that I hate. Like, as a writer, I do not like these phrases. Yeah. And that they're like aspirations of my parents. When I was young, I heard them talk about this kind of stuff. And it seems completely outdated and actually like a language of white supremacy that I don't think we can buy into anymore.
Mm-hmm. It connotes the idea that, Asians are coming from like a Western culture. We value education and we value community, right? And they want us to continue to not fight back, to not protest, to not be radical and stand against white supremacy, because that's how they control it, right? Using what we're good at, like own cultural background that we value.
That we're actually supposed to give up and melt it away into this pot of homogenous assimilation.
But we're giving up our own culture in some way. We give up our own identity, our own practice, our own values.
I mean, yeah, like the collectivist cultural practices of like my grandma. I remember her teaching us to be Chinese second, but American first, to speak English. She assimilated us by not speaking Chinese to us because she knew that the accent puts you into a specific category. Mm-hmm. But also she didn't want us to forget, but I would be like, okay, how come we don't do a lot of the, like, we didn't think that way. We just did the holidays. So, you know what I mean?
Well, let's talk about why we will never be number one as Asians. Why do you guys think we'll always be middle management and never the C-suite? Why can we never rise to number one and be equal to whites?
Because we don't have blonde hair, blue eyes, and a penis.
Yeah, you're not a white man.
Or a white woman. So it is actually based on nothing but optics. We're never going to be considered white because we have slanted eyes and we have flat faces. And that's just East Asians. Like, we're not even talking about
South Asians.
The vast majority of Asians in South Asia, West Asia, East Asia that we're representing, Central Asia, and North Asia. That's a huge, huge landmass of so many varieties.
We all get the lumped into one group, AAPI Heritage Month.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
and like between the U.S. and Europe, that only accounts for 4% of the global population, and so Asian, when you count all of those areas that I just said, it's much much greater, and so when we talk about the model minority in America, we're actually talking about the global majority outside of America.
I had a thought. It will come to me. I just, in my head, I just feel there's no culture in whiteness. It's a social construct. And
Mm-hmm.
for a lot of, if you think about a lot of folks who came of the global majority who came here, is because they wanted to survive. So a part of acculturation, assimilation, is a survival mechanism. It's not a choice that they want to be white, but it's like life and death versus death.
Do you want to talk about how you came into the country? How your parents came into the country?
Colonialism. I mean, Vietnam War. I mean, I'm sure everyone heard about it, but a lot of people don't know that, the whole point of Vietnam being the war started because of colonialism,
Mm-hmm.
where we're, as a small country, but as a coastal country, we have a lot of resources. So we were colonized by the Japanese, by the Chinese, by the French, and the US wants a piece of us. So, you know, before I don't know much about the Vietnam history because my parents would not talk about what,
Mm-hmm.
even to this day, he would not tell me what happened to him
Wow.
and his family. And my mom's the same. And what happens that led to them fleeing and feeling like they need to leave the country. But I can see that, it wasn't an easy decision for sure to leave your homeland and not being able to return. But it's a survival mechanism. It's a survival like opportunity. Take it and a lot of my cousins and my extended family in Vietnam are also struggling, in their own ways. So yeah, I think that we came here as refugee, which is a different story than how other East Asian folks immigrated here. But there's a lot of unprocessed, unspoken trauma, even within my own family of origin.
And given that, in the spectrum of like whiteness to blackness and Asians being in the middle, we are actually closer to blackness in the kind of traumas that we hold inside of
Right.
us.
Absolutely.
And that's a thing that we're not supposed to know. We're not supposed to choose that, and we're not supposed to group ourselves with that.
Well,
Yeah.
the history of Black Power and Asian American power is actively suppressed.
Mm-hmm.
Like I didn't hear about the Black Panthers and Asian
And
American
yellow
social
peril. Mm-hmm.
activists. Like it's just, and now I see like what's going on right now in the political climate with censoring, and I'm like, oh, of course they don't want to talk about an alliance that could really, really work,
Mm.
and did work. That did actually have success in, yeah, and so of course they're going to actively suppress that.
Can I add a thing
Yeah.
about the Vietnam War?
Mm-hmm.
Of course.
Even in my own family members and a lot of, people in Vietnam still believe that America are the one who saved us when they're actually the one who instigated the war.
It's so twisted.
Absolutely. It's infuriating
Mm-hmm.
that when I was trying to have a conversation with my own family member, how much involvement the US military have prior to the war and how much they instigated for things to happen is, we wouldn't have the amount of destruction, like cultural destruction, like destruction of land, of people, of heritage because of this war. And it's because of US instigation. And still a lot of refugee believes that Americans are the savior.
Well, and that because that's what Americans say. Like they present themselves as the heroes here in this case in Vietnam, as well as World War II, being the ones who freed the Jews from the Holocaust when it was actually the Russians, the Russians and the Chinese.
You have to offer a citation for that, but I do have. for our audience.
Okay. So like, so I think that what white supremacy has done extremely well is um, to give Asian Americans the sense that they have they always have the potential, if they work super 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 hard, to be white. But the win for them is that regardless of where we end up on the spectrum, we will always be anti-black. And that, I think, is the goal that they achieve, that they have turned Asians into people who are anti-black.
Mm-hmm.
And that successfully divides us into camps so that there can't be any cohesive possibility for
That's their
group
strategy.
rebellion. Yeah.
Divide and conquer.
Yeah.
But pitting a different community against each other, and that's how they will always come out on top.
Yeah, like we hear about all this stuff, you know, like this was always theory, but then when I felt it in my own bones, like when I woke up one day and I looked in the mirror and I was like, oh my God, you're Chinese, you're not white. It was like, it sounds ridiculous, but that actually happened to me. And I think that that happens to Asians or any non-white person. Someday they'll wake up and look in the mirror and be like, I'm not white and I will never be white. They will never accept me. And so there is how we exist in the white gaze, and then there's how we exist in our own selves when we can finally take off the white rose-colored glasses that we've been wearing all our lives.
Which leads to my next question. How do you take off the lens, the rose-colored glasses?
It is the
For
painful
other people.
It is the painful process of decolonizing. And it's asking the questions and looking around and paying attention, like paying fucking attention. And not simply doing what I did and like buying white supremacy hook, line, and sinker, because they are like these glasses that you wear. And so like this is how I would like to end this episode, with like three calls to action if you want, like one thing to ask, one thing to read, and one thing to watch. And so the thing that I would like people to ask is this question we started out with, which is, how did you figure out that you're not white as an Asian American, right? And that's a question that you can ask your friends, you can ask yourself. And then one thing to watch is this episode of Black Mirror, and I have the name. It's called Men Against Fire. And in this episode, these soldiers are fighting these monsters, but they have had their eyes doctored with these special lenses. But one soldier, his lens got knocked askew. And so he was seeing the monsters that he was actually fighting, and they were human beings, but the lenses made them look like monsters. So I thought that was a good episode to watch. And then Sinners, of course. And
It's a great movie.
yeah, yeah. Sinners is amazing. It like shows how exactly in the middle we are, and that because we're in the middle, we always end up betraying blackness, which is what happened in the movie. And then a thing to read I want to recommend is a book by Claire Jean Kim called Asian Americans in an Anti-Black World, and that really like helped rip my eyelids off to see in a coherent fashion what was going on and how I got shaped, how my mind got shaped.
It's a heavy hitter, just fair warning.
Yeah, it is. It's a heavy book. Yeah.
Heavy in terms of tissues,
Density of concepts.
anger, frustrations. Like what emotions?
It's an academic book, so it's
it's
heavy
dense.
in that it's like meaty and scholarly. So that is it for us, and hopefully you've enjoyed that and had a few things to take away from this episode of Asian Pickles, and now you're in the pickle with us.
Yeah, send us a DM or email us, and we would love to hear your comments, any feedback.
Any coming out stories too, or even if you're in the middle of your realization, just know that you are not alone. There's a lot of people who are either actively suppressing that experience or they're embracing it a little bit. So, yeah, thanks for watching and thanks for listening. Talk to you guys soon.